Welcome everybody this afternoon. We really appreciate you showing up. I'm Jimmy Stone from F&O. I'll get to the thing, but I'm not going to speech, by the way, so don't get nervous. It's Pat who knows something about this. So I got a couple things I want to say on the way, and then like I told Pat, I have an advertisement between when Pat comes up and when she starts to speak, okay? So let me just tell you about the Sustainable Campus. We really appreciate everybody being here today, and it's one of our Sustainable Campus initiatives to have these meetings on the sustainability at ORNL and in the community. So we really appreciate you coming out and hearing this talk today. Can everybody hear me over on this side also? I can't tell if the mic's working or not. Hey, Will, can you turn it up just a tad? Okay. So for the benefit of anybody who's not familiar with the Sustainable Campus initiative here, let me tell you a little bit about it and where it's been going. It's been happening since about 2008. Most of the coordination, if not all of it's run out of Melissa Lapsa and her organization. It's not really run out of F&O. We may be the brokers of the money, but really Teresa's over here. She's the other one that's involved in it heavily, so her and Melissa Lapsa are the two that you can talk to. But it really is about the ORNL sustainability effort here, about landscaping, which Pat's going to talk about today. Energy management efforts, we got a big one going on there. If you don't know, the steam plant's being converted from natural gas now over to biomass. That's about a $50 million investment into the steam plant. If you have not seen that, you ought to go down there and take a tour. It's an amazing. That's going to be about 12 to 14 truckloads of biomass a day will be going on there, which is about $10 million of savings a year on natural gas that we have out there, okay? So there's 28 roadmaps that we look at when we do the Sustainable Campus that Teresa and Melissa keep up with, and all that's from a number of people in the laboratory that are running those 28. There's things in there like sustainable employee transportation. There's also the ones about sustainable landscape, which is the one that Pat's going to talk to you today about. Clean and renewable energy sources that we have out there. Sustainable land use. The vehicle fleet, how we have a sustainable fleet. Of course, a lot of you got mad at us last year because we lost 58 vehicles at the end of the year. I hear you. That was not by my choice. But we do have a lot of alternative fuel vehicles out here, and if you know, we've got a lot of solar charging stations now for electric vehicles that are around. That's going very well. If you have one, you can park it up the hill and charge up there. And of course, then our energy efficient buildings that we can talk a lot about. You're sitting in one of them today across around the campus. Every time we do either a new building, DOE now requires all line items to be certified LEED Gold that we have out here, which is what we're going for in the new MLF building over there. You can get a whole lot more about the Sustainable Campus initiative from this website right here, which is part of the advertising I'm getting. So you can go there, or you can just go to the homepage and find Sustainable Campus, which is very nice. These seminars, it's really to showcase examples of our sustainability effort here at the laboratory. Our speaker today is somebody I've known for a long time who works on F&O with us. It's Pat Parr. Probably most of you all know. She's been around here, and she is the natural resource manager for the ORNL reservation, which we control the reservation. Pat does, all 34,000 acres that are around here that we also do it on behalf of DOE. She's a part of the F&O directorate. She's been there for, well, several years since I've been in there now for quite some time. And she does she works to integrate the ecological approaches into ground maintenance, also into our landscaping and planting. Whoa, now I know you can hear me because I can hear myself, Will. There you go. So she does that for us. Pat earned her BS in biology from Tennessee Wesleyan. She won't tell me what year. She also has her MS from ecology from the University of Tennessee. I'm going to read a couple of her accolades she's got here. She's the past president of the Association of the Southeastern Biologists, past president of the Tennessee Exotic Pest Plant Council, past chair of the Southern Appalachian Man and Biosphere Cooperative. She is presently the chair of the board of directors of the Discovery Life in America. That's the nonprofit that supports the biodiversity inventory of the Great Smoky Mountains. And Pat's been heavily involved in that. The last few years, we've had lots of conversations. She takes me out some very interesting places around the reservation. The only deal is, when I get out there, she always takes me somewhere there's a lot of chiggers. Somehow I get eaten up every time I go out there, and it's incredible that I come back. The other day, though, she took Kay's in the back here, who works in F&O. She took her out to see some flowers out there that I missed the other day that were beautiful on the reservation. So it's a great thing that we do around here, and we really appreciate what Pat does. I can also tell you thanks very much for everybody that works on the Sustainable Campus Initiative. Very, very nice of you to spend your time doing that work and to make ORNL, really, we are one of the leaders in the nation as well as within DOE on sustainable campuses. And we really appreciate everybody's help that does that. Now, as Pat comes up, You can come on up, Pat. I'm going to do an advertisement also that Bo asked me to do, so I'm going to read this one here, if you can. The Sustainable Campus Initiative is seeking nominations, and they've got to be in by April the 2nd, for the ORNL Earth Day Community Sustainability Award. This award recognizes an ORNL-based individual or team that makes a significant contribution to sustainability in the community at a local, regional, national, or global level in a way that goes beyond the requirements of the job. I think all of us do that, go beyond the requirements of our job a lot, everything we do out here. If you would like to nominate an individual or team, please submit the nomination from highlighted in the ORNL today. There's a highlight. You can just go in there and go to the form on that, or you can do it through Amy Wolf. We'll be glad to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pat. We really appreciate all of you all here today, and we really appreciate everything you do for ORNL. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimmy. I guess I still have a few minutes left to talk. Can everybody hear me? Good. Okay, so we're going to talk about Lessons from the Woods, landscaping sustainably at ORNL. When we had a lot of changes and did a lot of building in the last 10 years, it brought us the opportunity to improve how we do landscaping at the lab. Opportunity to do lots of things, but one of them was to look at our landscaping and to try and do it more consistently across the lab and bring in some new ideas. So a conceptual master landscaping plan was developed. This was about 2003 that we began working from. And one of the key components of that plan was to use native plants in the landscaping, which was a very new concept to a lot of the people we worked with. But what we wanted to do was we wanted the landscaping to be attractive. We wanted it to function in an ecological manner. We wanted it to be low maintenance, low cost, easy to maintain, and biologically diverse. And by incorporating these kind of things, it would reflect the uniqueness that we feel we have here at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. We didn't want people coming on campus and feeling like, oh, it's like the same as driving into Turkey Creek or some hotel entrance or some other supermarket area, because the same kind of plants are used in the landscaping. So we knew that in using and highlighting our native plants here, that would help reflect the uniqueness of the laboratory. And also, what we wanted to do was to bring in this idea of a lab within a park. I'll talk more about that. Mentioned using native plants. You will see them all over the campus. It was a new concept. Most of the folks that we had worked with that had done landscaping have their traditional ornamental kind of plants they're used to using. They know how they'll grow, and we threw this monkey wrench in there. We want to use stuff that occurs on the Oak Ridge Reservation and put that in the landscaping. Well, they don't know what these plants are. They don't know how they grow. It was a real challenge. So we've had a lot of education to do. So, advantages of using the native plants. By using plants from our area, they give us this sense of place, and they help us learn about the vegetation that's right here. These plants have grown up in these kind of conditions, so they're adapted to the changes in weather and drought and other environmental conditions. They're not aggressive as many of ornamentals that are planted are, and so they're not going to cause problems and move out into areas to where you later need to go kill them or treat them or deal with them. There's opportunities to educate people about what grows in this area and to demonstrate some of the approaches that we're using, and you'll see some of those later. These plants support our native insects, birds, and other wildlife. Native plants and insects and birds, they have evolved together so that they're dependent on each other. And so there are some birds and insects that can't survive without these native plants. And using non-native ones, these invasive plants, it doesn't work. They don't have the same kind of associations. And then often native plants are more deep-rooted, especially the native grasses, and this helps protect our soils as well. Oh, I wanted to also mention I show a couple of books that are two of my favorite books. One is by my friend Margie Hunter about landscaping with native plants in Tennessee. I've got copies of both of these in my office if you want to check them out. The other is Doug Tallamy. He talks about what you can do in your own yard to help improve attract natives and improve the environment. All right, so historically, ORNL was built for a mission, and in doing that in the early 1940s and 50s, for landscaping, we're left with a legacy that's quite challenging because the campus is full of fill material. The creeks were buried and channelized. Vegetation altered or just totally eliminated. Lands are eroded. I don't see a lot of topsoil, and the streams were highly impacted. So these create challenges. And the forested area around Oak Ridge National Laboratory, there's 34,000 acres on the reservation. Much of this land, too, was disturbed by the people that were living here at the time, the early 1940s. We know there had been a lot of farming and clearing and grazing going on. But in those 70 years since the government acquired the land, these forested areas have recovered and are functioning in a fairly healthy kind of manner. So we want to take advantage of that and learn what we can from the surrounding forest. ORNL sits in the middle of this forested area. So what can we learn about the ecosystem that surrounds us and bring it onto campus and mimic those functions here? At ORNL, we started out with the grounds crew would plant ornamentals, whatever they thought was pretty, wherever they could plant it, and I'm deciding now in whatever they thought would grow in those particular areas. Like I said, that's a real challenge. So then we shifted and we said, okay, instead of putting in these ornamental plants, we want to put in native plants, all right? That was a big paradigm shift for a lot of people, but we're moving on. We're going the next step now. You don't just want to stick a native plant here or here. We want native plant communities, because it's those communities, associations of plants that function as a group that benefit the soils, the wildlife, and other plants. So one of the things we've also done is take a look at the Sustainable Sites Initiative. This is to landscaping as the LEED certification is to facilities. It's a pilot right now, but we're positioning ourselves to be ready to jump into that when that becomes functional. But they focus on ecosystem services, and this is very similar to the direction we've been trying to go in looking at the functioning ecosystem around us. They look at air and water cleansing, and I've put just an example in parentheses. It doesn't include everything, but reducing pollutants that you put into the air would be an example. Erosion and sediment control, that would mean not losing the topsoil that you have. Global climate change regulation is locked up in our trees. We don't want to lose our trees. That makes an impact on global climate change. Habitat functions. These provide refuge and reproduction habitat for our wildlife. Hazard mitigation. How can we reduce vulnerability from flooding and storms and wildfire? Human well-being benefits. Walking paths. Our benefits from just being in nature. Local climate regulation. This would be things like the trees that provide shading or windbreaks. Pollination. We can provide plants that encourage pollination, these species, and then encourage growth of other plants. Water supply and regulation, protecting our watershed and the water that's stored in those aquifers. Now, there's more information at the Sustainable Sites website. So we have done a variety of landscaping projects. These range from very small areas to a lot more complex areas. This at the Clinch River Cabin in the White Cedars Natural Area, what we did there for landscaping is extremely minimal because we didn't want to disturb the area anymore. So we looked at the ferns that are present in that natural area and used plantings of those kind of the fern species in the area near the entrances that had already been disturbed near the front of that building. So that, again, that is minimal. And we put signs around that area is an extremely diverse and high quality hardwood forest with a lot of different kinds of oak species in it. So we've got some markers out. If you get over there, walk around that gravel circle and take a look at what's there. At the entrance to 4500 North, we put in native woodland wildflower species in those 3 square planters that had been there. We got these from a local nursery. The nursery lady had collected seed from Anderson and Roane County and grown these plants. So they're very typical of what grows on the Oak Ridge Reservation. And they're starting to bloom now, so take a look at that and watch it throughout the season. There'll be different things coming out. In the 4800 area, the courtyard, and outside that area, we've done a couple things. I guess you've noticed as you come into work and drive the roads of East Tennessee how beautiful the redbud are this year. It's one of my favorite trees. And they really stand out against the cedar and the white pine that also grow along the edges. They like these more open areas. They can take droughty soil and hot weather. So the picture on the right, on your left, over here, is along Bethel Valley Road. And then what we tried to do in the landscaping outside the courtyard was to mimic that by planting redbud and cedar out there. And then inside the courtyard, you'll find other native plants. The ORNL detention basin. This is the basin that is near the conference center parking area and near the traffic circle. That big parking area captures the runoff, and it's sheeted across that area down the hillside. And it goes into this detention basin area, and originally it was to be planted with fescue. And so we proposed that instead of putting fescue in there, we make it a pocket wetland. It's been really successful in the area. Originally, it would have been mowed. Also a challenge because the area stays wet. So now we've eliminated the need to mow it. We've got native plants growing in there. The wildlife love it. This is the top picture is, it's vegetated. It's fully vegetated now. So it captures water. It helps store water. This is one of our major flood events. And then it helps clean this water as it moves through the system and gets back to the creek. Drop ponds at the new parking structure. Up where the electric car charging station is, this picture is taken from standing up at the electric charging station looking down. This picture is taken down here looking up. And so if you look down at these ponds, our engineers have designed something so that all this water that runs off that parking area is shunted to the drop ponds, and it goes into one, it settles there and it fills up, then that slows it down, then it drops down to the next level. Fills up and it slows it down, so it drops down. So as it goes down these drops, it's being slowed down. And it gets down to wetland area at the bottom. And this is an area that had originally been a wetland, and it was doubled in size. And that area then helps clean the water, continue to slow it down and absorb it before it goes on out to the creek. Over at HTML, we did riparian work. the work at HTML and work over at First Creek that I'll show you next were both part of mitigation for the parking structure. And because we had plans or work already in progress, the TDEC approved these as mitigation areas, and we were already set and ready to go. But over at HTML, again, we took a look at what's in nature, what's out there. So this rock right here on the left-hand side on your screen is a rock outcropping that occurs behind the HTML building naturally. So the landscape plan, the idea was to try and mimic that rock outcropping and then have planting pockets within that. And it's along this creek, which is a very steep creek. It had been very hard to maintain, was really grown up, had lots of invasive plants and other things. So it's going to be easier to maintain now. It's much healthier for the creek. It'll be safer, I think, to maintain. And it should improve water quality and be a lot better for the environment. We have a sign over there which helps describe what we tried to do. So if you get out, walk over to HTML up on their porch there. There's a sign that was developed by one of our designers, and it explains what we're trying to do, as well as what some of the plants are that you're going to see in that area. So that's going to be fun to watch it as it actually starts to grow out through this spring. First Creek, again, that's over at the West Campus, and it was also, we had already begun the process of doing enhancement landscaping along the creek there, so it was allowed to be part of this mitigation. And this area, I don't know if you remember, but between the creek and the curb, it had been pretty much mowed all the way to the curb. So now this design has it planted out to the curb, except there are some half circles that still have grass in them to help give you like a border effect along there. And then there are rain gardens that help with the water that's coming off the road before it gets down to the creek. These rain gardens will help slow and filter and clean that water. They're not totally planted out yet. You can tell from the right-hand top photo that we still have to finish getting the Cherokee sedge in it, but they're still effective the way they are now. So I'd like to see get some additional rain gardens out. Another thing that we did, since the plantings are so pretty, but there was parking right up to the curb, was we moved the curb stops back. So you can go walk along that area, and the plants have been identified with markers. This was a major one. How many of you remember what the pond used to look like here? Oh, not enough. It was really awful. It was surrounded with a fence and invasives. It was maintained by mowing right down to the edge, but it was not easy to mow that area. There was no access for staff to get near the pond. And the swans that were in it were being fed, which really attracted the Canada geese, so contributed a lot to the Canada goose problem. So we decided that was a major thing to start some work on. We wanted it to be a more natural environment. We know we'll never get it to be a totally natural environment, so we keep working on it as we can. Enhance the wildlife habitat, definitely reduce the maintenance needs there, and then make it a place that we want to go. I think we've done that. We have a plan that we're implementing in phases and pieces of it, and I know it's hard to read, but really what it does is there are different plant community types that we're striving to achieve around the pond, so that as you walk around the pond, it'll also be a different kind of experience where you can see, oh, these are wetland plants, or oh, these are our cedar barrens type open area plants, and just learn like that. So we've gotten a good bit done, made some progress. This one of the there on the left is an information sheet about some of the progress we've made in the plants that have gone in there. As you go around too, look for these markers. People were using the pond, they're walking out there. So we decided that let's mark off every 1/10 of a mile. So you'll see these markers, they indicate 1/10 mile distances. And then I was out there last week, you never know what you'll see out there, I don't know if you can see it, but that's a muskrat that's in the pond. So keep your eyes open, there's always new things to see. We are doing some special things too. You know that American chestnut used to be abundant in our forests in the southeast, and the chestnut blight took those out. But the American Chestnut Foundation has been working and have developed hybrids that are American chestnut, but they also are resistant to the chestnut blight. And so they gave us a good quantity of seed that we have grown in the greenhouse and are working on a plan now to get those planted back out in appropriate areas. Equisetum. These are the plants in the planters outside this building. These, I say, they're our landscape link to our energy mission. These plants are very primitive plants. They are the plants that would now be the kinds of things that are in our fossil fuels. So I like to say that's a link, but they occur naturally on the Oak Ridge Reservation along streams. And that the big picture on the bottom right is a picture from out in the field. Along the streams, they don't grow quite as aggressively and tall and densely as we're seeing out in these planters. And you'll notice that this year, when they started growing so high, I figured they were going to be taller than the trees in there, so we started cutting them off. And then you'll see this year they're like cut off down here because it was they were getting so much dead in the middle of them. So it's truly an experiment. I think they look okay. West Campus landscaping, again, use of native plants, maybe in a little bit different kind of patterning, but over there we've also put in native grasses. It helps demonstrate to visitors what these different native grasses look like, particularly switchgrass, which is one that has been used in research here. And then just basic things like screening utilities, up at 5300 and at S&S and some other places. We're using different plants to help block some of these more unsightly things that we have to have. So now how do we manage it? There's a lot of different things that we're doing. One thing, I don't know if any of you last summer were out where the purple coneflower had gone to seed. Did you see all the finches? They just are really loving the seeds. But if we had done like we typically do in managing our landscape, those plants would have been deadheaded as soon as they finished blooming. So what we're doing is we're leaving the seeds on. It gives interesting structure during the fall anyway. And then after the seeds are gone, which is the food source for the wildlife we want to attract, then you can clean up an area. We do prescribed burns. This one is over on First Creek. Did we get one done this year? Okay, it was on our list, but everything is greened up so quickly we haven't been able to get all the burns done we wanted to do. So this is it's along First Creek. It's near the ProtoServe building, and the area had been maintained as grass and mowed regularly. Again, it was a hard area to mow because it stayed wet. And so even when they were able to get in to mow it, it compacted it and left ruts. So we put it in native grass, and that's been very successful. And we could bush hog it when the ground's dry enough and it's appropriate, or when we can find the right window in the weather, we'll burn it, which is a little bit healthier for the whole ecosystem. And invasive plant treatments. We do this over the whole reservation, but you'll see it more here on campus, and our own F&O staff has been trained now to recognize the common invasive plants, and they're dealing with them. Pond maintenance. Do you like those lilies on the pond? We grew the lilies and we put them in the pond and they did fine, and then last year they exploded. And so you may have noticed during the winter months there was it covered the pond. And so we're trying a couple of different things. The pond is going to require maintenance just like other landscapes do. So they've been mowing the lilies. After the talk, go look out the window. It's a very different look now, but it'll give the lilies more room to grow again. Protecting and improving water quality. That's so important, and it's something that we've not really paid good attention to. So one of the things that we did was get information about the stream buffers we want to see, well, the state wants to see, and we do too, 60-foot buffers on both sides of the creeks and streams to help protect them. So we got those put into the engineering database so that now when people are planning projects, they can see, oh, okay, well, we need to stay moved out this amount, instead of coming in with a plan and then we're saying, you can't do that because of this, So you have it as upfront planning. It's in the database. And these buffers are really important because, again, just like the other water quality things I was talking about, they slow runoff, they clean clean out sediment, they clean the water as it's coming through, take pollutants out, and they help keep our streams and the wildlife in the streams and the wildlife that uses the things in the streams healthy. Our ground staff had been used to mowing the lawn areas and mowing all the way down to the creeks. That was standard practice. But to have the riparian buffer zone, we didn't want it mowed down there. We wanted that area to grow and then to eventually be replaced with riparian vegetation. So to help us all remember where these boundaries were, we put up posts with bird boxes on them. So as you drive along, you see these posts with bird boxes. You should see that the vegetation behind them toward the creek hadn't been mowed. And then permeable pavement. If the rainwater can come through the pavement, then again, it can slow it down, it can disperse more easily, or you can capture it as it comes through and shunt it where you need it for irrigation. So we do have permeable pavement in several places now on campus. Sometimes you can't find the plants that you need, and we grow them. And Mike Ryan has started an aquatic plant nursery over on the West Campus so that when we need plants, they're available. This has been handy, learning how to grow these plants and also how to get them planted out and survive has been good because we practice here on campus, but then they've used the same techniques off of campus at other parts of the reservation when they're doing wetland mitigation work. A good example of that is the P1 ponds over near ETTP. So what we learn here, we can take on out and use in other places. Then our trees are valuable, so it's important to protect the trees that we have and plant more. And we share information in various ways. Like I said, we've got signs at HTML, we've got signs to put up over at First Creek, we've got markers trying to get more of those out. We doing talks. We've got a great website. Just go on the ORNL homepage to L for landscaping, and you can get to the website. We have a revised campus landscape plan. We got that just recently, and so we'll be taking components of that, taking a look at that, seeing what we can do, what we can plan to do, and how we integrate this with other planning on the campus. One of the things that we are going to try is we've been working with the utilities folks, and right now the areas under the utility, the right-of-way areas, they're mowed. And so we would like to work together and put out native grasses there. That makes it a better habitat. It reduces maintenance cost. And when you have to remove danger trees along the edge, it helps minimize the impact that you see from those removals. So we've got this new landscaping plan, we're calling it 2020 initiative, that we're looking at to pull in parts and do some things over the next few years. Some of our future directions, again, we want to continue to reduce high maintenance kind of areas. And the one that comes to mind most is lawn areas, because you have to fertilize and water them, and then you have to mow them. So converting those to landscape areas over the long run, we feel is more cost effective. And again, one of the things we'll probably do over the next few months is actually take a look at the cost effectiveness and do some evaluations on that. Converting right-of-way areas to native vegetation. In the work that we did over at HTML, where I said we used the rock, tried to mimic what we'd seen in the natural landscape, we used salvaged rock for that because we're trying to get away from buying rock. Rock that we buy has been farmed or taken out of more natural environments. So it makes sense to use the rock that we pull out of activities here, use them as a resource and save them, salvage them, use those in our landscaping. Explore wetland mitigation banking. Don't know if it's possible, but we want to look into it. Are there plans that we can go ahead and have developed in case we need some kind of mitigation plan? We can say, oh, okay, this is what needs to be done, or can we go ahead and do something and get some banked credits for what we've done? Just planning ahead, because it benefits us in many ways. Using stormwater as a resource. A lot of places look at stormwater as a problem. How do you deal with it? Well, let's don't deal with it. Let's use it and let's value it. And there are ways to do that. Identify no growth zones. We've got a lot of existing resources, special areas. Let's take a look at that and protect those, protect what we have, because it's a lot easier than going back in to try and restore it. Integrate research into the landscape. There's got to be more ways that we can demonstrate the research that's done here at the lab in our landscape, whether it's in our hardscape or it's in plantings or whatever. So I would appreciate ideas on how to do that. Right now we've been focused more on the main campus, and so again we'd like to take a look at the areas that are off of the main campus. And incorporate more walking paths. That's part of the planning as well. So we have all these ideas and we're incorporating all these things here at the laboratory. But another hat I wear is natural resources management for the whole reservation. And I use this as a test place for so much, because we learn things here and approaches to management or new ideas that then we can take out on this Oak Ridge Reservation and incorporate and improve the management that we're doing in the big picture. Wanted to remind you, many of you probably saw it, there's a table just outside the door that has some material on it. We have a landscaping, we call it a brief about what we're trying to do here at the lab. And then I'm part of the Tennessee Exotic Pest Plant Council, and we put out this brochure on plants that you can use instead of invasive plants. A lot of people have favorite bushes or plants that have been in their family or been in their yard forever that may be invasive plants. And if you want to look at replacing them with plants that also attract butterflies or hummingbirds or have great fall color, take a look at this brochure, because it gives you good alternative plants to use. And it tells you what it offers, what each of them offer as well. So, are there any questions?
Before we
have any questions, do you have questions? We'll use the microphone so we can get them on the audio tape. Does anyone have any?
Keith?
Thanks, Pat. You did a wonderful job, and you're doing a great job. Bo asked me to ask a question so he wouldn't have to walk very far. No. Actually, I have a couple of questions. Some are very simple. Is the 2020 plan available for review and comment? Is one question. Is it possible to let us know who does those nice little markers that you were showing that are kind of, they look like almost stone with the writing on them? If we want to get some of those for ourselves, I thought it might be nice to know. And there are some hillsides like, was it the Quonset Hut Building 1000? Between that high spot and ProTuServe, hillside facing north and west, it's kind of steep. They went through last fall with weed whackers, and I saw the birds and nesting animals flying up in front of the row of, 6 gentlemen doing a good job kind of going across that hillside, cutting everything down. But maybe that's in the 2020 plan. But it seemed like, as you say, a lot of cost to maintain something that might be added to the list. And finally, is there any recommendations on where workers who might want to do more native plantings in their homes could get the native plants?
Okay, I can answer all of those. Okay, the first question, and I'll repeat it because I think he was hard to hear, was about the 2020 plan and being available to look at. It's still in the draft state. You can't look at it yet, but we're going to put it out as a TM. And then we want people to look at it. We'll also put it online. We want people to look at it. We welcome ideas. So you can send them to me or send them to the Landscape Review Committee. One thing I was very negligent about was this isn't my project. There is a whole group of people that work and are involved in this. There's a Landscaping Review Committee, there's a riparian working group, and there's a Natural Resources Management team, and then there's F&O grounds folks. I mean, it's just, it's a huge effort. So yes, we would welcome input on that when it comes out. And the second question was, give me a hint. The markers, okay. That's a good idea because we get lots of questions about that. So I think on the website, I can put something on there about where we got the markers. And that way, if people are interested, you'll know where to go. The third question was? Over at the 1000 area. Around ProTuServe. The 2000 area, okay. I can't do much about that. That is not in our area of responsibility. That is Crowett, I think. So we can talk to them and make suggestions, and darn, we should have invited them today. But that's a really good point. And then the last question was? Oh, the sources. It's already on the website. Yeah. Vendors, some of our local native plant nurseries, and there's 3 primarily. One is Grow Wild out of Von Noor, Tennessee. One is Sunlight Gardens in Andersonville. And then one is Tennessee Naturescapes in Oliver Springs. All of these vendors will be here for Earth Day. And Mike Ryan and I are doing a lunch and learn talk on the 18th, the day before ORNL celebrates Earth Day, about the plants that we've used in the landscape. So we'll give you a little more information about what you're really seeing. Yes?
I'm not sure this.
Okay. I'm wondering if you have any plans for any, say, hiking trails on the reservations? Like the ridges back here would be really fantastic hiking trails for folks to go over lunch.
Yeah, walking paths are of interest to a lot of people. There are public greenways on the reservation. Since the reservation is DOE property, any public or walking trails like that have to go through them, but you can always suggest some, and we can make recommendations. As far as just walking paths for staff, work that through Joan Lawson, because she has been able to open up a few places that staff can walk. I think there's a walking map online as well. Tennessee Naturescapes in Oliver Springs. And that's where we got the plants that we put at the entrance to 4500 North. She's very small, just getting started. Other questions?
Are you inventorying animals instead of birds, presence, and how that's changed in landscaping?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't think we've really done an inventory on how it's changed since we've done the landscaping. We're part of the breeding bird survey for the reservation, so we do have paths and routes throughout the reservation. Have you done anything just specifically on site?
Neil's done amphibians and reptiles and the reservation. Everything's a bit more reservation based than just on campus itself.
Okay,
And
so,
we do track some insects, aquatic insects and fish and marine plants, part of our river wildlife. We've noticed those changes.
so I don't know if you could hear Mike, but he said we've gathered information on amphibians and reptiles and insects, but it's reservation wide. We haven't really looked at if there's changes here. One of the things I'd sort of like to do is dragonfly study around the pond, because I don't think we had very many there at all to start with, so anything we have would reflect an improvement in our diversity. Questions? Yeah. Okay. Remind me what they're called.
They're American foods. They're already, they would be more comfortable around people than a lot of them. That's one of the hopefully encourage more use by waterfowl and farm. It's been a little slower than expected. Those are native.
Could you hear Mike's answer that they are American coots? Okay. Thank you. This was fun.